There's a big difference between wanting to work internationally and actually being prepared for it. Today, on Pod Virar Referência, I'm speaking with someone who has spent over 20 years working across more than 70 countries, helping companies and professionals navigate one of the most complex challenges in global business: communication across cultures. Rafael Pinto is a strategic international advisor specializing in cross-border market entry, business development, and cross-cultural communication. And today, we are going to talk about what really separates those who try to go global from those who actually succeed. Rafael, welcome.
Thank you so much, Julia, for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here. I hope I can share a little bit of what I've learned along my journey and talk about internationalization, which is the area which I'm passionate about. Thank you.
So let's go. Before all this global experience, who has Rafael at the beginning?
Well, I think from the beginning, I was already a global citizen, so to speak. Due to my father's work, I had the opportunity of living in several countries, leaving Brazil very, very young. Grew up in Africa and Asia. And since then, after going to college and working, I have lived in a total of 10 countries and doing remote work as well in four other countries. So this this access to exposure to several cultures, background, people have been inside of me since I was very young. So this curiosity for the international field, international work has always been with me since I was very young. So that's who I am. And then, as we'll talk a bit later, that's how my direction, my work developed from my own interests and background experiences working internationally from before.
You always saw yourself work internationally, so, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've
That's
always
really
had
cool.
keen interest and curiosity about history, about culture. Like I said, growing up in different countries, I was always in contact, connecting with people from other countries, and that was really always interesting for me. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to travel to these places. I still have a lot of places to go and visit. So yeah, since I was very young, I had this interest.
Nice. And what was your first real exposed to working across cultures? How was that for you?
My in working wise, I was in university. I was living in Miami, and I did an internship at an international public relations company, and that was my first work in practice, right? Working with people from different, mostly in Latin America, different countries, and I enjoyed that. I was still learning how to speak Spanish, but it put me in a place where I had to, out of my comfort zone, I had to learn how to respond, interact with people from different countries, different stakeholders. So that was my first experience, and from there, it helped me jump into other opportunities that came along for me.
That's so nice. And this experience to study abroad, how was that for you? Because you lived in Asia, you went to Miami, to United States. How was that for you to adapt in another place?
Adapting, I feel like I was very comfortable. I have been moving around countries all my life when I was growing up, so adapting wasn't that difficult. And in the universities I studied, I also studied in Spain my first 2 years, and all my colleagues, most of my colleagues were from different countries, so adapting wasn't so difficult. Of course, when you come to a new country, there is a period that you need to understand the culture locally, how things work, and there's always a period of adapting. But I feel confident. I enjoyed this challenge of coming to a new culture and working and studying there, for example. So it wasn't entirely that difficult, but I do understand there are challenges. People do have challenges, but because of my own background and my own willingness to learn and curiosity, I didn't have as much difficulties in adapting, so to speak.
That's really good because sometimes people are afraid to go to a new country. They can't speak the language. They are not extrovert, so it's really hard to adapt in a new country. So you have this from the beginning, right? And you've worked across more than 70 countries. Tell me a little bit more. How does it started?
Right. When I moved to Washington, D.C., I was looking for a job. I went there for an internship, was able to get a contract. I stayed there for several years. In my job, based out of Washington, D.C., we work with programs all over Latin America and the US and Canada. So, so I was interacting, working, traveling to many of these countries as well. So that started this number of how do I get to 70, right? People ask me that. And then I was able to also move to another organization, the World Bank in DC. First, I worked at the Young America's Business Trust, which is an organization affiliated with the Organization of American States. Let's say it's like the UN of the Americas. It's all the countries in the Americas. And then I went to the World Bank, again, interacting with people now from all over the world. The World Bank has offices all over. And finally, well, and then I had a little experience which was super important and a rich experience that I had working at the Dominican Republic for 10 months um, to work on the field, work projects on the ground, not from an office in Washington.
Uh-huh.
And then when I moved back to Brazil is when I opened my own business. We can talk about that a little later, but in my own business, Julia, I work with international projects, international business opportunities. So I'm always talking to people from different countries. So I calculated a little bit on my head the interactions, work I've done, what countries have I accessed or got to know people and had a professional interaction with, and that's how I got to 70. And I think it's going up already, this number.
Yes. And what has surprised you the most along the way?
That's a good question. What surprised me is that what my old boss, my boss when I was in Washington, always said, people do business with people. Okay, it's not company with company. Inside a company, you have people. So people like to do business with people they like, that they trust. So working with all these people all around the world and meeting them and learning from them, they're all people. Of course, there are different ways. That's where all the part of our cross-cultural communication comes into play. There are ways of approaching, of communicating, of providing feedback, of collaborating, of breaking the ice, building rapport. There are different means of communicating with people, but they're people. And what surprised me is that people want to make things work. They need trust. We all have the same objective, but we just have to understand how to approach this and work with them, um, which can be a culturally appropriate for their own experiences and how we can fit culturally and communication style so that we can make things work. So we have the objective of having the work done, but learning how to collaborate with these teammates and clients and colleagues from all over the world. So bottom line, I think what I learned, what surprised me is that everybody wants to work with people they trust and they like. You just have to learn how to approach them and 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 not impose your own ways of working, but learning how to find a balance between the culturally appropriate way of communicating and working with people.
That's a good point because sometimes people has difficult to speak with another person in a different country, in a different culture, right? And I'm here in Canada, and we have a lot of a lot of cultures here, and sometimes we need to understand how they act, how they do the things, because we need to talk with them, right? And how was the experience for you to understand more these cultures? Like, do you have an idea how we can deal with these different cultures?
Yeah, it's a good point, and you're going through this yourself in Canada, which is a very multicultural. country. It's fantastic, fantastic place to learn from other cultures and interact with them in person, right? Because there's so many cultures represented there. Um, I think learning is in practice. I mean, you can read about it, you can read articles, read books about, and but you really have to go out there. I think what you can do is prepare a little bit beforehand in understanding a little bit of the history of the country, understanding, for example, I don't want one thing I learned is not to generalize. Okay, like I
Okay.
myself, I'm Brazilian, but I worked and lived in the United States many years. I grew up in Asia and Africa. So the first thing is when you work with someone, I think you should do a little research, understand who they are. If you can do that beforehand through LinkedIn, for example, great, because that's one practice I do. If I understand that the person, let's say, lived studied in the UK or the US, they have a little bit of a different mindset, not just entirely Latino, let's say, or Brazilian or so forth. Um, and then and that way you can also prepare yourself. If you don't have access to their background, I think the first thing you do, Julia, is when you meet them, you ask questions learn about them, learn about their backgrounds, learn about how they prefer to communicate, what their experiences are. That can give you a direction because it will not generalize them as, let's say, an Ecuadorian, a Chinese alone. This person has had experiences abroad, has studied in other places, so that gives you a little bit of an edge of understanding culturally what they have been exposed to and how you can interact with them. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I
Yes, it
see it. You,
makes.
yeah, you can't go around guessing and don't generalize. Try to understand who that person is. If you can do that beforehand online with their profile, if not, when you meet them, ask questions, learn about them. Because do not generalize somebody. I mean, I'm an example. I'm not a traditional Brazilian, So but that's the beauty about meeting new people. You get to know, and we're such a globalized world that people are working international, even remotely, and people do travel a lot more. So I don't know if
Yes.
that answered your question, but that's how I see how you begin this kind of interaction with
That's
different cultures.
awesome. Yes, I totally agree. And what's one mistake you made early on when dealing with different cultures? What
Yeah,
did
that's
you
a good
do?
question. It goes back to a little bit what I just said. Don't generalize. Don't generalize.
Okay.
Saying something just because they're from Mexico or just because they're French. Don't assume that they're gonna act the same way as all the French people. You know how television and all these things portray cultures, as one way, and people have
Yeah.
that in their mind. Well, everybody acts like this in that country, so don't generalize. That's a big mistake. I've made that mistake with in some cases in the past, and I try to be very diplomatic in the beginning, and then you get to know, and then you have the personal personality and personal behavior of the person that you can see if they're more open or closed. Then you adapt to that. If they're more, it could be someone from a more closed up society, but then that individual likes to be more extroverted. Then you adapt as you get to know them, but don't generalize in general. That's the first mistake, and I've gone through that experience mistake a few times already.
Perfect. Perfect. And what do most professionals misunderstand about working internationally?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. And I see this challenge constantly. Um, you you can think of the perfect business plan, marketing plan, expansion plan to get into a new market. You can think of all these things nice and organized on a piece of paper. But one of the mistakes is not understanding how to communicate, uh, how to understand the cultural nuances when you're working with somebody else, be it a colleague, a client, a partner, a different market. Again, you can plan out, okay, the prices, everything, how to get into new market. But if you don't know if you're not communicating well, I have seen over the years, Julia, my own experience, projects, business opportunities that were fantastic. The buyer, the seller, they want to do business, but they don't click. They didn't click culturally. They didn't understand each other. They didn't want to make an effort, and the business didn't go through. So this communication, the cultural aspect is important. It's very important. It will make or break open doors or close doors for when you work internationally. That's from what I'm learning, and I see this day by day.
That's really important, right? And where do companies fail the most when in entering new markets? You told us a little bit more about people who work there, but when they are starting a new business across the country in another place, what's the fail that they do?
Um, I think it starts even before they get to the country. I've seen professionals, companies think about, well, I want to go to the United States because I like the United States. I like to travel there. Oh, I heard that Colombia has this opportunity. They they don't research. They choose markets without really understanding if there's a demand, if there's real opportunities, there are real potential partners or clients for their product. I think, and I see this a lot. Oh, I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Portugal because they speak Portuguese. I want to start there. But is there an opportunity for your product or service in that market? Yes or no? I mean, that should be the first decision because you're going to spend a lot of money, a lot of time trying to get into a market that probably nobody really wants, or that your product is not competitive.
Hmm.
Other competitors are in the market. So I think understanding first why you want to go international. Second, which markets would be the most appropriate ones to go first. And I think a lot of companies don't go through that thinking pattern beforehand, and they spend a lot of time and money wasted on that.
Okay, and you work directly with these companies and professionals, right? Navigating
Mhm.
international markets, and what kinds of problems do they usually come to you with? That you solve the problems for them, the challenges. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, this has led me to when I'm talking about my business, one of the things I've been recently focusing a lot more energy on, because I work with communication, coaching, consulting, international intercultural communication, and the other part is business, which is international trade, market entry strategies, market research. And I think a lot of people they lack this communication part. How to first of all, how to find potential partners or clients in another market. Number one, I've in this case I have helped and I continue to try to help through my network, through the contacts over 20 years. It's going to be 24 years I work I know a lot more of Latin America. My experience is a lot stronger in Latin America. So I have a strong network in many countries in Latin America, but also in other countries. So I work along with my partners, strategic partners, different countries, to help uh, talk about that market, present this client, or connect them with potential clients and partners. So that's one, how to find potential partners and clients. And then the second one is how to communicate. How are you going to work with them? After you find them, how do you talk to them? How do you interact? What's the cultural nuances to take into account? So I've helped with that, and those are the services I'm actually focusing a lot on moving forward this year because even yeah, through coaching or consulting, getting them through this first hurdle. Many companies, sorry, perhaps later can hire a local person in the country that can help them navigate this. But it takes that first few steps, first few months. They need to navigate and understand if they're going to move forward, and they need this connection. So that's one thing that I, myself, and my strategic partners in the countries help the clients with, is this finding potential clients, partners, and communicating with them in the first few, let's say, a few months. Which is the which
Perfect.
is key because then the client, the company will know if it's worth going to the new market or not.
Yes, for sure. And thinking about a little bit of a strategy as execution and communication, how much of international success is a strategy and how much is execution and communication?
That's a tough question, and I don't think I have an answer, Julia, because it depends. so much on, it depends on the kind of business, and then it depends on
Okay.
the market, in the market you're going to.
And
I can tell
you
you,
deal with a lot of types of companies, right?
yeah, yeah. I have worked with technology companies, agribusiness, virtual reality, commodities, products, small products that people, drinks and different things that people sell in supermarkets, and so a different kind of products. But I think to your question, I think I've had experience as well where, because I had a strategic partner in the country, that the communication and marketing was super easy because the person in the country knows the market specifically well. So it really depends on where you're going, what product or service you have to offer, and also what kind of network you have in these places. So I can help in some countries in make this connection faster because of the partners I have there. But it's very difficult to give a percentage because it depends a lot on where you're going and
That's
what your
okay.
product is. But it's a good question. It's just I can't give an answer.
And when we are thinking about the decision makers, the leaders in the companies, what separates a confident decision makers from those who get stuck in the ideas?
You mean when they're going internationally or going or in?
Yes, because when they are thinking to expand, right, they need a decision maker. They need a leader who will guide in this phase of the company, right? So, what do you think that makes them confident or they get stuck? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a relevant question because I've seen this. One of the first things is um, help training a lot of these directors, these leaders. A lot of them, and I've spoken to CEOs and leaders of companies who want to go abroad. They don't know where to start or how to start. I'm not generalizing. I'm saying there are companies that do this well. They're bigger. They have resources for this stuff. But the smaller and medium-sized companies, a lot of tech companies, a lot of tech companies are easy to go abroad because you don't even have to open an office in another country. You just have to, find
Yes.
local partners, so forth. But I think one of the key things is educate, train these leaders to explain how this roadmap, this journey of internationalization would take place. I myself, in my own company, we working with different partners, we've established a internationalization roadmap. So it's a step by step, educating them how it is to go internationally, some steps that they would have to learn to understand beforehand. Because the last thing I recommend people do is go without planning because you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of your time. So you have to be strategic, prepare yourself. And the leaders are the one that make that decision, right? If they have to hire someone with an international background that speaks different languages. So I think the training of these leaders to help them understand what the process is to go international, then they can make decisions on hiring, on resources to allocate, which market to go. They can plan it out more concisely. But I think there's a need in the market I see here, even in Latin America, to train, let's say, educate or train um, how this process works, and so they can make more strategic decisions without spending so much of their resources. Yeah, that's how I
Really,
see it when
really
I talk to
good,
people.
really good answer because we think a lot when we are going to another country. If you really need to learn the language or the culture or the business that they have there, and it's really important to be prepared before to go, right?
Exactly.
And right now, Rafael, I want to do a little dynamic with you. And I will say a phrase and we will complete with um, uh, a name that you
Okay.
agree with that team. Okay. So, the
Okay.
most challenging country you've worked in?
China.
China. Okay. The easiest culture that you work with?
I, do I have to say one country or I can put the region? I
Yes,
think
you can tell
Latin
me
America,
more.
Latin America in general, because I know it well, and we have a lot of similarities in cultures. We're not the
Nice.
same, but we have more connections culturally, so it's always been easier. Latin America.
Nice. And the most surprising culture? It can be in business or just
Yeah,
traveling. You can tell me a little bit more.
surprising in a good sense.
Or in a bad one. I
Um,
don't know. I don't know
that,
what you
that,
did, what you saw.
no, I think no, I think the Caribbean. I worked in two large projects in the Caribbean, got to travel there, and it's fantastic. The people are fantastic. I was pleasantly surprised. And being a Brazilian, I always say, well, we have to use our soft power. Our soft power is
Uh,
Brazilians. People do like Brazilians. People identify Brazilians. In Africa, people in general also like to do business with Brazilians. Um, so I've always been treated very well in the Caribbean as a Brazilian, but also surprisingly working with colleagues from government, from universities, private sector, NGOs in the Caribbean. It's always been a pleasure and a lot of fun to work there. So yeah, pleasantly
nice.
surprised and happy that I worked in the Caribbean.
A country where communication is extremely complex.
Um, I have received a few missions of young professionals and clients from Russia. Complex because of the language, more than anything. Fantastic people. I had received several of them here in Brazil over the years, but complex because of that. And yeah, just um, the bureaucracy of how to doing things there. But I was lucky I have a partner there that speaks English well. So, but it wasn't easy. When I received them here, it was challenging to communicate more because of the communication.
That's nice. We can generalize, right? Because
Yeah.
when I think about Russia, I think in people that it's introvert, seriously, and everything, right?
No, you're right. But yeah, we cannot generalize. The people are fantastic who came. They love Brazil, but yeah, you had a few introverts there. But no, I mean, yeah, it's that's why I said in the beginning we can't generalize. I think the challenge was more the communication, to be honest. But after we started the dialogue, it was easier to get moving. But because of the communication, I mean, that
Perfect.
also goes with China. My experiences, it's just the communication part. It was challenging.
Nice. And the last one, a cultural mistake that can cost a lot in business.
Yeah, very good question. I think create in the first contact in first encounter that you have with them, a cultural mistake is not to come out making jokes or becoming too unprofessional. In Latin America, we're very warm, we're very open. We like to connect with people, but I think that sometimes is a disadvantage if you take that into the professional side. You come in joking too much or informal, people might see this as you're not as serious person, not as serious professional. You can open up afterwards when you get to know people. So I think the cultural mistake is that try, especially in the first encounter,
Yes.
come in more professionally and you can feel how that person is. There, you can open up a little bit more of them later or not. But I think that's a big mistake that people do right from the beginning that they shouldn't.
Perfect. Great answer. And talking a little bit more about what you passed through your career, what is one lesson from your career that most people would never expect?
One lesson.
Yes.
Um,
What do you learn about it?
yeah, I always think about my career and how to always improve. And one thing that I learned, Steve Jobs had a quote that says, "You connect." the dots looking back, right? So you go through your experiences and you can see, oh, this happened because, and you start connecting the dots. And I think since I was very young, I like to work with people, and all my professional experiences has led me to work experiences where I work with people. I'm not stuck in a computer all day, not interacting, which is not wrong. Some people do enjoy just being focused in their computer. So I've always enjoyed working with people, and I look back and all my jobs have had me interacting and working with people. So I think that's very important because you have to, as you keep growing, excuse me, if you keep growing professionally and personally, you start identifying where your strengths are, where you should put your energy in. So my energy flow, as we say, is really um, focusing on my strength, on networking, on working with people, interacting. And that's where I guess the lesson here is identify where your flow is, where you feel comfortable. In my case, I feel comfortable learning and working with people for several reasons. And and I keep and focus, if you have a business, focus on product services because I work with services. I don't sell a tangible product. I work with service. So
Yes.
work, identify what you're good at, but what your flow is, so that you can build your business or your programs around where your strength is. And that's very individual. This is my case, but everybody should just think about where their career has taken them, what they've enjoyed doing, what they have not enjoyed doing. And I think it's important early in the career, when I was in my 20s, I worked at different things and different projects and people. I learned things I didn't enjoy doing. So then as you progress, you eliminate. I'm not going to spend time on that because I just don't enjoy. I'm not good at it. I don't want to focus on that. And you start identifying where your flow is, where your energy goes. And that's the lesson. But that's something you learn over time. It takes
Yes.
time.
Yeah, it takes time. And I think this is kind of a mindset shift, right? Because it changes your career, it changes what you do through your life, right?
Right, right. And when I worked in different organizations, which were very incredible experiences, met amazing colleagues, learned from so many colleagues. But then as you go through these experiences, you also learn what makes you tick, what makes you your drive, right? And I think I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs for many years. Entrepreneurs, we had programs for training and for entrepreneurs in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I think that always instilled me a um, a curiosity of being an entrepreneur myself. And that's when I left Washington after I finished my master's and worked at the World Bank. But I felt that I'm very creative. I like to create things, and that's how I became an entrepreneur. So if somebody had asked me 20 years ago if I want to have my own business, I wouldn't probably have said no. But you go through experiences, and that's what led me to understand that I like this entrepreneurship mindset, like you said. But because I went through my experience in the past, it led me to what I am doing now. So yeah, I mean, life
That
is like
that's
that.
beautiful. Yes. And thinking about your career, what where you want to go? Like, do you have um, a legal? I don't know how to say that in English. Sorry, legado. Do you know?
A legacy, a legacy.
Yes. Uh, what legacy you want to leave in this country, in this world in general?
It's a tough question. Hopefully, I have many more years that can prepare a legacy. No, I think no, but that's a good question. It makes you think, because that's what drives you and that's what keeps you waking up every day.
With
I
your
think
flow.
what I enjoy doing is connecting people. So this connection through my work, um, through creating programs, projects together with different partners, is a connection, learn, and with the stuff that I'm developing with cross-cultural communication, is helping people connect with each other, different cultures. So this connection is in a world that we see are so divided, polarized,
Yes.
people fighting with each other. how we can connect with each other is, I think, I one a legacy I would leave behind from things, my own personal living connections with people, but through my work as well, how I can help connect people for projects, business opportunities, or even culturally speaking, for them to learn more about each other.
That's beautiful. And I want to thank you about connecting me with some people here in Canada. Thank you a lot. It's not Canadian people, okay, guys, because here in Canada we don't have just Canadians, of course, but it
Yeah.
was with our incredible Brazilian, Marceli. I'm really thankful about it. And Rafael, this was incredibly valuable for everyone that are listeners. And this conversation goes far beyond international business. It's about your mindset, clarity, communication, and real world strategy. So, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And do you want to share a final message for everyone that is listening?
No, great. Thanks for the invitation. Congratulations. I like this kind of idea of what you're doing, the podcast, of sharing people experiences, because learning from each other will speed up our learning curve, and it's enriching to learn what other people have done, and we can take it in for our own experiences. So congratulations on that, and good luck on the next episodes. No, I think internationally, the final words is internationally, it's working in a global environment. It's just remember that you're working with people. They're from different countries, different cultures, different backgrounds, different ways of doing things, of communicating. Just, don't be scared. I see people who are just fearful of talking to other people. Understand they're people. They want to do it. If it's a business opportunity, they want to do a business opportunity. You just try to be open to understand how they work, their culture, and find a balance where you can make things happen. You can work together without disrespecting them, without going off limits. So just think that you're working with people. Just approach it, learn how to approach it different ways. And the way by doing that is talking to them, asking them questions, making them feel comfortable, and creating trust. The most important thing is trust. People do business when they trust you. So creating that trust is the most important thing. So go for it. It's exciting talking to people, meeting other people from other places. It gets our lives more exciting. It gives us more energy, I think.
For sure. I love to connect with people, and I'm so glad that I meet you from Professor Yogi. I'm really glad of this connection, and congratulations, Rafael, for your work, for everything that you've done. And for everyone watching or listening, if this episode gave you new insights, share with someone who also wants to grow globally. And
Yeah.
talk with Rafael in LinkedIn. He is really open to conversations. It's just Rafael Pinto, right?
Yeah. Yeah. On my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Don't forget to follow Pode Virar Referência. Bye bye.